Now, when watching movies that are based on historical events, what I would always try to look for is if it actually accurately represents those said events on screen, whilst also making sure that it, still remains a really good film to watch. In this film, it captures it really well. It's just that the only question is, does it do it right? This is The Admiral, Roaring Currents. The Admiral is a movie directed by South Korean director Kim Han-min. Han-min would win two highly acclaimed awards in his country thanks to this film. The first being Best Director in the 35th Blue Dragon Film Awards on December 17, 2014, and the second being the 51st Daejeong Film Awards on November 21st, 2014 for Best Film. The film attracted 17 million moviegoers, becoming the first most viewed and highest grossing film of all time in South Korea. It also became a box office hit internationally and grossed around $138.3 million worldwide. The story of the film, or what the story is based on, is the real life history of Admiral Yi Sun-shin, the supreme naval commander of the Joseon Kingdom, and now a recognized national hero today in modern day South Korea, who fought against the odds against the Japanese invasion led by Toyotomi Hideyoshi during the Imji War, which lasted from 1592 to 1598. With the Korean army on land facing defeat after defeat, their only hope of survival was only a handful of ships in comparison to the giant armada of the Japanese. But there are many things that the Japanese didn't have, one of which was the lack of naval cannons. The reason why Japan had none of these in their possessions during the war was because throughout their history, they've been fighting amongst each other on ground, instead of having any conflicts out in the sea. While the Koreans had to repel Japanese pirates around their coasts, which helped them develop proper artillery. Another thing the Japanese lacked in contrast to Admiral Yi's forces in the movie was the lack of unity and discipline. Yi was known to be extremely harsh. He would drill his men to top shape and would punish anyone who disobeyed or desert. While the samurais were egotistical and stubborn, and would usually try to one-up each other to claim more glory for themselves instead of fighting for the set cause. These factors alone, along with Admiral Yi's leadership, would be the downfall of the daimyo's invasion of Korea. But the question is, does the movie put that in proper representation in terms of history whilst capturing the battle with amazing filmmaking? The opening of the film starts out with a prelude that shows the state of the war. In the beginning, we are shown Yi being tortured in prison, but he isn't being tortured by the Japanese. Instead, it's his own people. Prior to the time the movie takes place, Yi would be arrested by the Joseon court when another Korean general named Kim Gyeong-seo submitted a message to the court that were essentially based on lies, and simply wanted Yi out of his position as admiral. As to why he would do this, however, before Gyo-seo sent his message, Yi was given the order to assault a Japanese fleet that was going to attack the southern shores. This information was given to the Koreans by a Japanese double agent named Yoshiriya. Yi, however, saw through this and immediately thought it was a trick to lure the Navy into an ambush and refused the order. As a result of his refusal, that's how Yi was arrested and tortured in prison. Once the movie finally begins, we're immediately greeted by Yi's stern and strict discipline when he puts his foot down when his officers began to argue with each other. The most vocal one being General Bae-sol. Now, I couldn't find much information about him, only that he took part in the Battle of Chicholyang. Now, Chicholyang was a disaster for the Koreans, which had destroyed all of the Korean Navy except for 12 ships that were able to escape, which is mentioned in the movie.
Admiral, you need to erase all of the doubt here. Aside from using that damaged turtle ship, what do you plan on doing?
You best remember you're addressing our commander.
How dare you! You should remember your place here. I'm your superior officer.
You don't deserve to hold any rank. We all know the truth about you, that you fled from Chilchongyang.
Shut your mouth! Do you know why we have those 12 ships out there? Because I saved them from being destroyed in the battle. You keep your mouth shut when you don't know the truth.
Now, what's shown in the movie after Yi and his generals had their meeting, the Koreans are shown to be reconstructing a turtle ship. And the design of it, it's pretty accurate. All except for its frontal piece, which is shown to be a dragon head made of stone. But in reality, the turtle ships would have looked like this. As you can see, instead of having its frontal piece being made of stone, it would have been just made out of wood, and the design would have been minuscule. Otherwise, it would have been too heavy to go out at sea. Now, going back to the scene, however, the Koreans' attempts to reconstruct the turtle ship never really happened. The reason for this is that Korea was already being dried of resources, and to try and rebuild a ship that requires expensive materials would be a waste of time, and it wouldn't really make any sense. Yi, instead, had the remaining 12 ships that survived the Battle of Chilchongyang retrofitted with reinforced hulls and armor, which made the most sense, and it helped maximize the remaining resources that the Navy had left. Now, there is this other scene that ended up having the turtle ship in the movie burnt down. This was a result of an assassination attempt and desertion by General Bae-sol. In reality, he didn't try to assassinate Yi in his base. Instead, he tried to do so in the Battle of Myeongnyang, which is the main battle scene in the movie. Now, it is understandable why the filmmakers decided to make such a scene, since it adds to the drama and the common issue of backstabbing and jealousy within the Korean ruling class to be shown. And it also shows how much the war was stacked against the Koreans, since they barely had anything left. Going back to Yi's strict discipline of his army, however, there is this one scene where he ended up beheading a soldier who tried to desert but was captured in the end. Now, I actually do not know if Admiral Yi would do such a thing, since there are no records about it. He would have definitely punished his men for severely disobeying him, but to the extent of beheading seems uncharacteristic to me. In another scene, Yi is shown to be giving the order to burn down the houses of the soldiers. Again, there are no records of such a thing ever happening. If anything, this order is completely stupid, because Admiral Yi is just wasting resources, and it would have already demoralized his men even further than they already are now. So, again, it's not only uncharacteristic, but it's also stupid. Anyways, moving on from all of that, in the next scene we are shown Admiral Yi looking over a cliff towards the Myeongnyang Strait. This strait had the strongest currents in the country, but it also had a unique phenomenon to it. Every 3 hours, the currents would change directions. This is the place where Admiral Yi had decided to make his stand, beginning the Battle of Myeongnyang. For the rest of the second half of the movie, it is all dedicated to the Battle of Myeongnyang. And by God, it is packed. From start to finish, this is where the movie really shines. To keep it short, the naval battle was made beautifully, the cinematography was on point, and each sequence are all well filmed, and also well acted by everyone who was involved. Now, the main issue with the whole scene, which may turn the movie off for some people, is that it could be overly dramatic at times. For me, who is familiar with the style of Korean entertainment and media, it was expected for me that the film is overly dramatic, since a lot of Korean shows and K-dramas tend to do so. But for people who are unfamiliar with Korean-style entertainment, they may not like it that much. One scene that is overly dramatic are the scenes showing the civilians signaling Yi's men about an approaching suicide boat, or them being inspired to help in the battle by running off to, well, nowhere, by trying to pull even Admiral Yi's massive flagship away from a whirlpool. All of this, obviously, of course, never happened, but I can't deny that it does make for great scenes to add to the already fantastic film. Another example is when the Japanese finally get in range for their ideal style of naval warfare of boarding the enemy ship and entering into hand-to-hand combat, which did not happen in this battle. It was something that Admiral Yi actively tried to avoid, knowing that the Japanese would easily overpower them. So, this chaos of the Korean soldiers alongside their warrior monk allies fighting on the ship didn't happen at all. But again, it's understandable why the filmmakers decided to make such a scene. In reality, the Koreans only lost at least around 2 men and only 3 have gotten wounded, without losing any single ship on their side. On the Japanese side, however, they have lost around 8,000 to 12,000 men dead or wounded, whilst losing 30 to 31 ships on their own. So, it is safe to say the reason why such an intense battle and a dramatic death scene for one of the Japanese generals was made is because if the film was just Admiral Yi effortlessly playing the battle on easy mode and showing the battle being super one-sided, then it would have been such a boring watch, which makes me very thankful that director Kim Ha-min ended up taking this approach. To conclude this review, The Admiral is truly an amazing film. Besides all of the things that I've criticized and called out on the film, pretty much everything else is well represented. From the attire of both the Koreans and the Japanese to the designs of the naval ships. Now, of course, the only thing that could be a deterrent for some people is how the film would be overly dramatic. But besides that, overall, the film is just phenomenal, which earns a 9.6 out of 10 for my books as a movie. As for historical accuracy, I'm gonna give it an 8.7 out of 10, primarily because the battle scene didn't really happen the way it did in the film. But other than that, overall, it's still an amazing movie. Anyways, I highly recommend watching the movie if you really want to have not only a great watch, but also a movie that does historical movies right. I mean, anything better than Alexander is already a great watch.